Yeah. But neon out the mud. Before I get it out the mud, I stay on top of my fitness and hit the shower, clean it up, and then get back to the business. I don't care about who did it, I ain't worried who didn't. I head directly to the back, so I'll be there in a minute. I got expensive taste, the rollie got a different face. For surely I be in them places, they won't let you pass the gate. Post it up, sipping $1,000 scotches with the rock in it.
Utica, New York. That's in the near the school, near the college. Utica.
Yeah, pretty close.
That's a party town there.
It's a town.
Framingham and Maine too.
Yep.
Cool.
What, all his locations
Yes.
for the stores?
We had one in
Testing.
Pennsylvania and closed it.
Closed it.
Yep.
Did that lead to
That's part of the story. Yeah.
that led to the numbers initiative?
Yeah. Yep.
Getting the data.
Yep.
Episode 15, the How You Doing show. Yasha Kahn, MCR Labs, the man with the numbers, the man with the data.
With some numbers, some data.
Some.
Yeah.
How did somebody like you get into the marijuana testing business?
I think everyone, or at least all of my friends, we smoked weed in high school, like everyone.
Okay.
So my brother, a chemist, Mike, and his friend, my friend Scott, also chemist, they suddenly, they realized there's going to be a need for testing in Massachusetts after the ballot initiative in 2012, 2013. And so I had a friend who had an HPLC, that's the instrument needed to test for cannabinoids, in her basement.
Okay.
And she was like, do you guys want this? Like, we didn't have any money, we couldn't afford anything. And so she gave us this dusty old HPLC, wonderful thing that she did, and $200 that they spent on eBay, and they fixed everything up.
With the machine, it needed a few kinks worked out of it?
Yeah, it wasn't working, but they fixed it. And then someone came in with money and weed and said, tell me what's in this. What's in the weed? And Mike and Scott said, we don't have a method yet. Like, we have the instrument, but we're not ready. And he said, he'll come back in 2 weeks. He wants results. And so they got to work. They got the method working in 2 weeks.
Okay. So this just started off the market, kind of just testing for people that you knew?
This is before it was legal,
Word
after
of
the
mouth.
initiative, but before it was legal.
Okay.
Because my brother would go to the legislative hearings and all that stuff when they were deciding, will there be testing? What does the program look like? And everyone else there, they were talking and they saw, okay, there's going to be someone doing testing. And yeah, that's how the word got out. And then we, for the first like 3 years, tested only for home growers or sellers, whoever wanted results, but no one had to get results. No one had to test.
Okay, yep.
But then like 3 years after that is when dispensaries started to open legally.
Okay.
And that's the point at which white collar folks came in and they hired specifically the folks that knew how to sell and knew how to grow, which are the folks that we worked with for the 3 years before that.
Okay.
So we just had this in of everyone that is working at these facilities. We've already worked with them.
Okay.
And so that's how we
You
got
already
it.
had the relationship.
Yeah, yeah,
So then you were
yeah.
like, all right, let's get a licensed facility.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, that was up in, like whenever dispensaries started to open 7 years ago,
Yeah, yeah.
we were all set. And then the last 7 years were interesting.
Were you one of the first ones open
Yeah.
for testing?
Yep. I think one of the first on the East Coast.
Okay. In Mass. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Now you need a license to test as well?
We need a license. So anyone can test. Like you guys have the Orange Photonics, you guys can test. But if someone wants to sell product legally in the legal market in Massachusetts or in any state, you have to test it at a lab that is licensed by the state. So in order to test for all of the big entities, you have to have a license.
Does that license take as long as it does to get one of those equity licenses to grow it and everything?
I don't know. Because when we did it, we were the first. And so in order for the program to even start, they needed to get us in. It took a long time, but we just went through it way before all this.
Is there any
Everything else happened.
is there any certifications a lab needs? Do you need like a PhD on site or
I don't know.
what do you mean you don't know?
Well, I'm not that PhD, but like we have highly trained folks that, I mean, I don't know what the exact criteria is. So the lab has to be ISO accredited, which means it follows certain standards. You have
A
to
third
have
party?
a third-party accreditation body that comes in and says, okay, we believe you guys are doing everything, at least documenting everything correctly. And then with that accreditation, you go to the CCC and you say, we want to apply. And there might be other criteria. I just don't remember if it's...
So me and the boys could get a lab.
Yes.
Not if you need a PhD, you ain't.
No, he said no. He
No,
said
no, definitely not a PhD. I think in some states you do need a PhD, but in Massachusetts...
No.
I don't know if there's an educational criteria, but you need to prove competency that you can do it.
Through the third party service.
Through that, but maybe also there's some criteria with the state.
Okay.
Like
So how
maybe
do you
there's something.
prove? Take a test?
Did your brother handled all that? The
Yeah,
filings
completely.
and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He handled that. So when you set up a lab, you have to have a lot of systems in place. One of the things that you need to do is prove that your method works. Only if you can prove your method works do you get the accreditation.
Okay.
And so there's some of that, but what the specifics are in Massachusetts, I don't remember. I know in New York, you need some very specific educational criteria. I think Maine, same thing. A lot of states have... Someone wrote down some criteria thinking, like, well, this is enough. Yeah.
So
Now,
you
is
guys
that-
started rock and rolling. Mass was the first state that you rolled out in.
Yeah.
And then testing was good then because you guys expanded.
Excellent. Yeah, we were doing so well testing for everyone that we could in Massachusetts. We did well. We decided to open in Pennsylvania,
That was the second.
second location. Yep. And that's when it got interesting because at some point, our customers would come to us and say, another lab is offering better results. They're offering not to fail us. And we were like, that's ridiculous. That can't happen. This is regulated. Like, that's illegal.
Like straight up out in the open, hey, well they're
No,
saying
no.
that they've offered to work with them.
The lab, we never heard this from the lab. We heard this from the cultivator that would come to us. They're saying, you failed us, this percent of the time, but this lab didn't fail us.
Okay.
And so we would tell them, how about we work together? We figure out what the problem is. We solve this problem. But you know what's easier than solving the problem? Just going to a lab that doesn't find mold. And so we would lose customers. And then we went to the regulators and we would say, there's this problem. It's a public health problem. And the regulators would tell us to go away. They just said, like, leave us alone, time after time. And so we realized we have two options. Start to cheat, manipulate results, or go out of business. And so we did. We went out of business. We decided, like, that's not for us. We can't compete in that. That's just not who we are. And we were fine in Massachusetts. So, like, what's the point of staying in Pennsylvania when we're doing something we don't want to do when Massachusetts is still doing great?
So those labs might have been collecting white envelopes.
I don't think so. I think what everyone does is they get the cultivator to test with them.
Speculation.
Well, it's you almost don't need to be blatant as that, because if you're a lab
Yeah.
and people are starting not to come to you because you're failing more often or less THC numbers, they're just going to go to another lab. And if this other lab you go on, he's struggling, he might be more apt to let you slide a little bit without even saying, hey,
Yeah, but
hook
that's
me
where the
up.
regulators are going to step in, right? And then what's the use of having a lab to have it all checked out if people are just going to pass it anyways?
Well, Ricky, I think he's getting to that point, right?
No, that's exactly it. Yeah, that's what we
right?
thought.
Yeah.
Like, well, how could this
You
possibly
got me
be
going,
happening?
dude, already.
Yeah, so that happened.
So you went to the state,
Yeah, and they said leave us alone multiple times.
they didn't want to hear it.
No.
Fucking state, lazy bastards.
What, the governing Cannabis Commission,
Did not want to hear it.
is that all you tried, or did you go to, other branches like Attorney General?
No. We just thought, like, who else is supposed to take care of this? It's supposed to be the Department of Public Health that oversees cannabis in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
They said, leave us alone. That's it. Oh, you look surprised, but the same thing happened in other states also.
With
It's-
firsthand from you, or another guy with another lab that you know that ran into the similar situation? Both.
Both, yeah. Like, I've been a suburban liberal Democrat my whole life, up until 2 years ago when I started dealing with this and realizing how sometimes government is completely broken. Like, these systems, like, we think that they're working, but they're not. It's
It's not working.
no, in a lot of times, not at all. And some are excellent. Like, the DMV works. Like, we all complain about it, but it works. You go there, you know what you can get.
Yeah.
And in some
getting
states, the
service.
regulators for cannabis, it works. Like, they do a good job, and that's why those states make more money, and the consumers are healthier there, safer. But other states, they would rather the regulators would rather pretend that they're doing a good job instead of addressing the problem, having that awkward conversation of like, yes, there's a problem. Yes, consumers are being misled.
Well, now they got to work now.
Yeah. Or they might have to say, for the last years this was happening, we did nothing.
And they don't want that either.
No, because then it shows either they were not aware, but they should have been, or that they were aware and didn't do anything about it.
Gross negligence here. Is that what they call?
I don't know what you call it, but
Well, basically, you just got to follow the money.
yeah.
It's basically. I want to hear about this Vespa moped you got. You really
You're
got a
doing
Vespa?
a lot of research. No.
Okay.
So I had a
Oh,
Vespa. I had a Vespa,
Okay.
but then in order to steal a Vespa,
Right.
what you do is you have to
Yeah,
jam
you have
it
to break.
really
You
hard,
break the collar.
and someone broke it. Yeah, and so up until 2 months ago, I had a Vespa.
And you were a 3-time national medalist for weightlifting.
I was,
Wow.
yeah.
Don't let this
shit.
guy get a hold of you. He's
Yeah.
he's sumo. You like sumo wrestling, and he likes rugby, and hand to hand. And you speak Russian.
I do.
Amazing.
Yeah, you got a thick accent. Are you?
I don't have a thick accent.
No, it's not.
Well,
that
you get
thick.
a little bit, you know.
It's because I lived in Los Angeles and New York and here.
You got
and
like a
so
combination of the two.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
Your parents, though, growing up, must have.
Only Russian.
Yeah,
Yeah, a
straight
little bit
up.
of an accent.
Yeah, a little. I didn't mean to be hard, but I can pick up on it. To me, it was. To me, it
This
was.
is what I look like when I'm offended.
Yeah.
Okay, you're offended.
Do you think?
Well, now you're talking shit about the government over here. Now you're offended.
No, the government's always right.
So, Yasha, you play with MMA at all?
I wrestled for a long time.
All right, we're going to have to go. Where's Dana White? Dana White, you paying attention over here?
Dana's probably watching.
Yeah.
So
Dana's
Russian.
watching.
So you went when you went to him the first time. Did you have all these data sets that you have now?
Where? In Massachusetts or in
Pennsylvania?
No, nothing. It was just rumor, but it's not our responsibility. It's not my responsibility to get the data to prove what's the problem. It's you go to an investigator that's supposed to look at this, and you tell them this is what I'm aware of. They're supposed to investigate. Like if you go to the police, you don't have to bring all the evidence. You say, I think there's a problem.
Oh no,
yeah,
no!
that-
Today you have to bring all the evidence,
All the
tapes,
evidence.
and the criminal,
Okay.
and
You
the
gotta
prints,
bring-
and the DNA sample, yeah, and the smoking gun.
Yeah.
I assume
And even
that was their
then-
job. I
And even
assume it
then
was
they're
their
getting
job.
off.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm fascinated with the data and just how many people are And where is this? Where is this really going to? People that held responsible for their actions?
Well, you went
Where's it
the,
going? I don't know.
well, you
I'm
went the
saying with
first
that.
time without data.
So that's Pennsylvania. No data. It wasn't me. I didn't go. It was others that were in the Pennsylvania lab and like our leadership team.
Yeah.
But I was kind of, I knew that those conversations were happening, and I was like, how could this happen? Okay, I guess we can't operate in Pennsylvania.
Shut it down.
Yasha, I feel like if you showed up, they would have fucking listened.
Especially
I'm
if
now
it's ripped.
showing up.
Yeah, I mean, they would have listened. A couple knocks on the table.
So these shenanigans down in PA is one of the things that led you to trying to collect this data set, or
No. So that was just like, we had this lab, that happened.
okay,
And if nothing else happened, I wouldn't have done any of this. Then in Massachusetts, a couple years later, so in beginning of 22, suddenly our customers or the cultivators that tested with us, some of them would say, hey, this other lab is offering us higher potency. And others would say, hey, this lab is offering us to not fail our products. And we thought, like, no, that's not going to happen. We have regulators, as we thought we did in
Yeah,
Pennsylvania.
who would think?
Yeah. And then they would start to leave, the cultivators. And this kept happening. So we went to the regulators and we said, this is what's happening. But this time around, we actually brought some evidence, as did other labs. We weren't the only ones that did this. Other labs came to the regulators and said, there's this problem. And the different labs that did this, we all bought products from the shelves, just like you're doing.
yeah,
We got them tested, and we saw some of them are contaminated, and many of them are terribly mislabeled. Exactly what you're saying.
with the potency inflation.
Yeah. Yep. And we came to them, and they furrowed their eyebrows and said, this is very concerning. And then they started investigating us. That was their response.
They
Yeah. They started to
Get the
investigate us.
flipped it on you.
Yeah. And then they used those investigations to stop us from speaking to their leadership. And then my brother, Mike, he spoke out about just the big problem of consumer protections of, what is it called? Unsafe products, public health problems, at a conference.
Like this Consumer Protection Agency, something like that.
No, at a conference. So there was a
Okay.
NECAN, the biggest conference for cannabis in New England. He did a talk about what's happening. And he said very directly what is happening, what consumers are getting versus what they think they're getting, and what other states have done about this to solve this problem. But there were some folks from leadership at the Cannabis Control Commission there.
Is this when the shakedown happened?
That happened like 10 days after the shakedown. The
'Cause
shakedown
I-
happened within 10 days. Yep.
I read a little bit, not much, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know.
They came into the,
Yep.
the shop, right?
Yep.
In Framingham?
Yes. So they're supposed to do inspections. No problem with that. But the way in which they did it, it was harassment. Like by every means, it was harassment. It was intimidation and a means to get us to stop
back
saying what
down.
we're doing.
That
Yeah.
must have been a big dude.
They told us to fire people on the spot for things that they were supposed to be doing. And then afterwards told us to, they cited us for not having fired those people, the ones that they told us to fire.
They can cite you to that now?
Yeah.
Why did they want them fired?
I think because they wanted to rack up as many like claims against us as possible for them to be able to close us.
From that interaction, from that visit, they wanted, based off their visit that day, they wanted you to fire
They
them
were on
people.
you.
No. So they very directly said fire those people. But what they, I think, wanted was an excuse to close us down.
But why did they say to fire him, though? Like, what was their example?
So yeah.
like,
they-
what did they say? Hey, this guy
No, it was very specific. They had CCC cards that were expired. They were legitimately expired. But
Okay.
the licensing department at the CCC told us they apologized that they could not get us the new cards because of their vendor. They told us to keep using the expired cards.
There you go.
So we told them on the spot that that is what happened, and they told us they're not allowed to be working in this. I don't know what the exact words were.
establishment license, whatever.
And so then a couple of weeks later, when we got all the paperwork from that inspection, one of the findings was that they did not get the documentation from us that we had fired those 3 people. Like that was the additional whatever citation.
It needs
Yeah.
more
Tally.
dirt.
Yeah, but that's not even legal where they can tell you to come in and say you have to fire somebody.
No, because if we did, then we would have been sued by our employees rightfully for wrongful termination.
Right.
But they put us in a position where either we have to say no to those regulating us, or we fire our staff. Excellent folks, trained scientists.
Can you lay them off?
We can. The scientists?
Yeah, but why would you fire him?
While you're going through this, right? Because it looks like now you're doing something, but they're technically not fired,
So
right?
We did not.
Of course they did. They stood again. They stood up.
No, yeah, we sent a
Well,
letter
shake his
to
ass.
the regulators
Yeah.
addressing what we thought was harassment. And like our folks went to our HR department and said, like, we felt like we were harassed. They yelled at us. The letter's somewhere online.
I thought there was a little physical confrontation.
There was the
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly.
Allegedly.
We don't want to throw
You give him
anybody
a
in the box.
suplex over there?
I wasn't there.
Oh, good thing.
That's why they got shaken down.
They timed it. So that was uncomfortable, obviously. And so we realized we don't want to go out of business. And there's nothing that we can do to get the regulators to change what they're doing. But what if we do something else? And in Washington State, a couple of years earlier, there was an article that came out in 538. It's like a news, a journalism outlet
Yeah.
for statisticians. And it outlined what this guy named Jim McRae did in Washington State, which was he got a hold of the data from all the testing in the state, and he reported on it on his blog.
Was he a pissed off lab owner too?
No.
Out that way?
No, just a data
Consumer?
scientist,
Just a
It's the guy
scientist.
doing his thing.
a guy doing his thing.
Doing the good work for the people.
And he went to the regulators and said what's happening, and they did nothing.
Shut him down.
No, they said,
They don't care. Charlie's a quack.
yeah. But then he went to journalists. And journalists asked the question of, why are you not doing anything about this? And then Washington State closed down 4 of those labs that were clearly manipulating results.
Damn, that sounds like a good result.
Then he did the same thing in Nevada. And I thought, that's really cool. And then I met through Jamie Toth, who used FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, to get data in Oregon. And I thought that was really cool. I've never, everyone's heard of the Freedom of Information Act.
Heard of it, but we didn't think it was really true.
Yeah. And so based on what she did and based on the results that Jim got, I was like, why don't I send Freedom of Information requests to a couple states and see if I can get their data?
You went
Because
fishing.
if all I got was Massachusetts data, that's not enough. Because then it's like, they might raise the question, but which lab is right? You can't tell. One looks like this, one looks like this. But what if you can get data from a lot of states, including the states that shut down labs? What if you can see that the labs that were investigated and shut down all look like this? And we see those same labs in other states.
Similarities.
And yeah, so that was the start of it.
So you got ticked off, and you were like, "I seen this guy out west through FOIA. Got this."
So he didn't get it through FOIA. It was already open data.
Okay.
And Jamie got it through FOIA.
Okay.
And I thought, why don't I try to do the same? That was the start of this. And now I have some slides to show you.
Usually that's how things start. You usually you get a file lit underneath you. You know, these people don't want to do nothing.
Yeah.
You guys got skin in the game. You got a lab. You can, you know, when you're in something, you're in an industry. You got your finger on the pulse. You know what's going on. You're hearing these labs of this, that, and that's why we started buying these people's product on the shelf and testing with the machine. And man, they're inflated quite substantial.
Test it for mold too if you get a chance, because you will see the same thing.
But one of the key things is not just the potency, right? Potency is just, that's
Yeah,
just okay,
that's just
whatever.
what we
but
can do, you
it's
know
the
what I mean?
contamination part
Yep.
that's hurting people.
Oh, that
potency,
outweighs
it's just
it.
like, okay, whatever, you're right. But not whatever, but that's not hurting people.
Well, that might
Right?
that might be a way to get the pathway to get some change through the inflated numbers, because at the end of the day, $1.5 billion last year, right, was spent in retail cannabis, Massachusetts, 1 year. If 50% of it was not right, ill-gotten, it was then like if everybody knows lab shopping's going on, you got to be kind of held responsible for committing the act. It's, you know,
Right, but the potency is
$750 million
the
fraud.
potency is something
year.
that, you know, you can say, hey, you know what, when we put it out, it was this. You know, maybe because it sat on the shelf. They have an excuse for potency, but they
me show
don't
you
have
some
an
data.
excuse for contamination.
So for both of those, I think the data really shows a really cool picture, because the combination of what you guys are doing, what Jeff does, with this data is what tells the story. I think bigger than
Right.
either of those two things separately can.
Right.
Yeah, because you want to know what you're smoking.
Yeah, health-wise, but if somebody's getting ripped off, there's like legal ways to go about that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if the data shows, you know, with any crime, you don't want to leave a paper trail. They have a metric system that literally shows consumers are buying. They're buying the products that are selling for the highest are
selling.
highest THC potency.
Yep.
You know, so right there, you got it on. You got a paper trail showing that they're buying.
They're not
that
buying
way.
filet. They're buying chuck meat.
Yeah, right. Man, if you went to your butcher and he's throwing you
But it's
stew steak
labeled,
in there and
it's
calling it
labeled
filet.
as filet.
Yeah, that's exactly
That's the
right.
label.
Get a
That's the problem.
package of stew meat labeled as a ribeye, dude. How you doing?
It don't matter. It's going. Hey,
Right?
it's going down.
Right? Yeah, there's gonna be a problem in that butcher shop.
Yeah, like a gallon of milk. You go to the gallon of milk and it was supposed to be a certain thing, and people would be up in arms.
Oh yeah, the milk. I don't know about the milk, but,
Yeah,
but if I got stew meat at the butcher and I was trying to get ribeye, I'd be pissed. So that might be the avenue, the path to take to really get some change if you start
So
from
there
a dollar
are class
amount.
action lawsuits, 6 of them filed in California for the potency inflation. There are
Class action.
class action, yeah, representing all consumers that were defrauded by those manufacturers.
Listen, people, save your receipts. You might get something on the back end.
Yep.
But you got the slides. You want to run?
Yeah, I do.
Run this presentation by us real quick.
I do. If you guys are you guys okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Fire away.
We
And
might be able
listen,
to get this.
interrupt me or tell me you're bored and I won't get offended, or stop me on any slide if it's interesting and we can get into it.
What do you think, Rob?
Roll it.
Okay. So 4 sections. First is just what is the data, then some really good things about the data that we can do with the data, what manipulation looks like for potency and for contaminants, and then some opportunities where we see what policies worked in which states to fix these problems. So there are 39 states that have cannabis programs. I sent Freedom of Information Act requests to all but 2 of them and got data for 19 states as of 2 days ago. Missouri, welcome to the conversation.
Was that one of the ones that you had to go the extra? No.
No, they were excellent.
Oh, they were gentlemen.
Yeah. And so this amount of data is really interesting because unlike corn or hops or whatever else, cannabis has to be tested. Every batch of cannabis has to be tested. All the data goes to the state. With corn, it's not collected in any one state place. So that means with cannabis, you can actually FOIA for the data and get all of it. And cannabis, unlike all those other crops, is tested for cannabinoids and terpenes and heavy metals and pesticides and myco and micro and water activity, moisture, a lot of things. So there's more data from tests on cannabis than there is on any other crop that's available.
Anything.
Anything.
Wow.
It is a treasure trove of data. And so some good things. So first we can see which policies led to more profitable markets for everyone, more profitable for the state, safest markets, and what safety limits should or shouldn't be set for contaminants.
Ricky's already being a shitty student. He's on. You see the slide, Rick? You listening?
He's trying to get his Corona open.
I go like,
Somebody help Ricky with his Corona, please.
Yeah,
It's emergency.
Get over there, go open this thing for him.
I got a can opener.
We have an emergency Corona violation.
Sorry.
Okay, so just a quick example. I'm sorry, this is going to be the maybe the most boring one. Massachusetts wanted to add a new test to all testing, to all lab testing in November of last year. They said it's going to be water activity, and we're going to set the limit between 0.55 and 0.65. Anything that's drier than 0.55 is too brittle. It falls apart in the bag. That's when the trichomes fall off. Anything more than 0.65, and it grows mold. And they did this based on the research by the right scientists, but the scientists did their work years ago before any data was available. And so when Massachusetts proposed this, one of those lead scientists, Chris Hadulla, and I looked at the data and rushed to the CCC to stop them from enacting this. Because if you look at the data, we see that by making this range 0.55 to 0.65, only 15% of flowers would pass. Looking at all the data from across the country on water activity, which means if this was in place, 85% of flowers in Massachusetts would fail.
Oh, just that green section is what would
That's
pass.
right. Yep. That's
Okay.
the ideal according to, a study that was done 12 years ago.
That's why.
But looking at all the data, it shows that you would crash the market, or every single cultivator is going to rush to just the lab that seems to only find water activity between those limits.
The right parameters.
Yeah.
So that I can sell it.
It would definitely,
exactly.
it would definitely increase the value in the market.
So
Supply
they
and
did
demand.
not move forward with it.
Look at the rise.
Yep. Okay. Policymakers need to be data informed, but there's also a lot of really cool research that can be done with this that was not possible without the data. A question to you guys. This is a trick question. If there's more water activity, will there be more mold?
I don't think so.
Higher
I don't know.
humidity,
Did they
more
do?
mold.
Have they done research?
It depends on the atmosphere.
So there is no. So looking at all the data from across the country, there
paying
is no
attention,
more mold in flowers if there's more water activity across
Okay.
all of the samples. And for me, it was like this completely blows my mind because it's different from what I've always been told. But it's nothing more interesting than just the Snapple facts. And the reason why there's no more mold is because the difference between 15% flour and 8% flour is a few extra days of drying, and mold hasn't had a chance to grow. Make sense?
Simple
Yeah.
enough.
Or is it the numbers are so juked that you
No,
can't
no.
get real numbers from this
No,
because?
this is a big enough data set
Okay.
from states that have good data
Oh, okay.
where there's just no correlation. It
okay.
just doesn't make a difference.
Okay. But I'm just saying, if the numbers are false, it's hard to.
So you extended it by 5%.
What's up?
You extended it by 5%.
No. I'm
because
just
you
saying
only
that there's no difference during compliance testing. That,
There's no
I thought there
difference.
would be, but there isn't. There is one of the more dangerous molds species is Aspergillus. It has seasonality. I didn't know this, and we can't see it without the data. That's why we see those
Has
peaks.
seasonality?
Seasonality.
Really?
Yep. In some seasons, there's more. And there's one species of Aspergillus that is very much underreported. It's Aspergillus terreus. And it's because it takes much longer to incubate, to grow. So labs are trying to get out results really quickly. And so they just don't get the result for Aspergillus terreus.
Yeah. So if it's sitting on the shelf for 6 months after it's been tested, it
Yeah.
could have that in there, but it passed early on.
No. So if they tried to get results out in 24 hours, but they should have incubated it for 48 hours. All they did was like just...
On the
they rushed
testing
it.
side.
On the testing side,
Okay.
they rushed it.
Okay.
So it's bad testing.
Okay.
We can measure the potency. We can get all of the THC results across the country. And we can see that there is growth of THC across the country over the years. We can measure the growth. We can also identify which labs are manipulating results, and I'll show you that later, how that's done. And we can see, we can actually answer the question, how many products in Massachusetts can be over 40% THC or over 30%, statistically speaking?
Flour?
Flower.
I don't know.
Over 40%.
Yep.
I haven't seen any that made like 38%.
It's about 1 out of 10,000.
Really?
Yeah, it's a unicorn almost.
I mean, it happens. Like, yes, it absolutely
It
happens.
can.
In every state.
Well, we tested one that said it was 40%, but I think it was really 20%.
Yeah. That's what
Yeah,
usually
yeah,
happens.
yeah.
But that's why you have to remove the dishonest labs. Because only then can you actually measure what is
real
the
data.
average in every market. Can you compare Maryland and Massachusetts and Maine?
What, do you got
Let's see.
that? You
Yeah.
got that correlation on here?
Not on here, but
this
it's in the
one.
data. And you can only do that with this kind of data.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We can take every cultivar that's been grown across the country and measure its susceptibility for mold. Some have never failed for mold, and some fail for mold more than half the time across the country.
Lemon pie.
So the ones
There's
that
a lot
never
of
failed
stats
for
here.
mold, is somebody looking at what they're
I'm going to
doing?
give Jeff a microphone
Meaning,
over here.
because it could be true that they're not failing for mold because they're doing everything correctly.
No, absolutely. So we had to remove all the data from dishonest labs. So this is only from honest labs. We made sure that for each cultivar, it's been grown by at least 3 different cultivators. So no one cultivator has too much of an influence. And then removed data from samples that are definitely outdoor grown, because that also adds a problem. And then out of the remaining ones, all the ones that had more than 30 samples, where we have the data, that's where we got this. So across enough of a sample size, we do see there's a significant difference between different strains, cultivars. Make sense?
Yeah. Oh, and in mass, 25% of them would be off. Like,
Yeah.
would be bad.
Well, yeah, but what if you only look at the honest labs? Then it'll be probably similar to this. And so this is only lemon strains, almost only lemon strains, because you can't fit all the 750 different strains on which we have enough data.
Okay.
But it looks the same. We see the same thing, that there's some that almost never fail, and some that fail all the time. Any questions? So that was the good.
But
There's a lot of research that
if
can be
you
done.
fail all the time, don't you want to know what the hell you're doing to fail?
Yeah. Or you find a lab that's willing to tell you don't fail.
Yeah, right.
One of those two.
Right.
Get them the right
Not-
fucking water.
So we need more regulation.
More
for that.
data, more open data, so that everyone can look at
Bottom
this and
left.
see, is it just me that's fucking up? Or does everyone that tries to grow this strain always fail for testing?
Right, but the investment in to correct it,
The
who
Costa.
wants to go figure it out? Right? Because sometimes these guys, like they have millions of dollars invested and they haven't made $1 back.
Yep.
Right? And then your first crop
You got to
is
get their money back.
infested.
Man.
Right? You got to get your money back.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not to say I would do it, but
Do some of these
I almost
guys-
can't blame them. But you also don't want to hurt people.
Yeah, you don't
But-
want to get
yeah.
people sick. Some of these people are buying it for medicine. And the same labs test for rec and
Everyone,
medicinal, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But no one's died yet.
That you know of.
Right?
No.
And honestly,
No.
that might take what it's that
Lorna McMurray died
Yeah.
at True Leaf.
really,
Truly.
Yeah. Yeah.
really.
Okay, so that was the good. There's a lot of really cool things that could be done with this data. This is just like a glimpse into it. And now the bad.
What's this getting your car bomb? The bad? They don't want you getting
It's
numbers
consumer
out.
fraud. It's happening across the country.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, and it's a big problem. It is reported in industry journals. It's been reported on Forbes, Bloomberg, Washington Post. This is the article that started this for me. This is about Jim McRae and the work that he did in Washington State. And it's been published in peer-reviewed journals across many states now. This one led by this gentleman over here.
Yeah. Jeff Rossin over there.
Dr. Jeff.
So this is prevalent in the open. So as a brand, do you think they know that they're lab shopping? Is it safe to say, like, at this point, it's so far out in public that you have to know if you're lab shopping? You can't hide behind the curtain anymore and be like, well, you know, I'm dropping off at a state-run lab.
I don't know what people know. I don't know what people are thinking.
So I have a question.
But I'll show you some slides
Yeah,
coming up.
I know. I
I have
was
a question
I
on
was
that.
reaching.
If you go somewhere and you fail, is it reported
Yeah, right here. I'll
by
show
you?
what that
But I'm
looks like.
saying, is it reported by the regulators? Okay,
so-
hey, he failed, so you know what? He went somewhere else with the same stuff and passed it, and now he can resell it.
No, but all that data is collected by the agency in every state that oversees this program. So the CCC in Massachusetts has all that data. Can look at exactly who did what, when, how they switched labs, why they switched labs. And you can see it in the data. I'm going to show that in like 4 slides.
Matt, I think he's talking. Matt Iarusi. He said that, like, if you send it in as a cultivator and you fail, it gets if you remediate it now, it gets a mark tag through the metric system. But that's not to the consumer. That's just for the.
But you're still selling bad stuff,
Well,
even when it's remediated.
yeah, it's not good. There's
But the other thing too is like
there's
you-
potential
you
for
said,
that.
You said it earlier because you can test it, it passed, and then if you're not packaging it correctly or on time or storing it correctly, that's still a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it still could lead to mold after the fact of the test, but it's not even. These labs are doing it like
Open.
yeah, before it even gets there, because the lab, you don't even have to ask for it, because if you're in the business and you're not getting customers, you're just going to want to pass people so people come to you. Or give them a high number.
I understand that, but I'm just
like,
saying
at this
about the
point-
problem to smoke good shit, healthy shit, right? It seems like it's
And it
almost
needs
like
a lot of work to be done.
yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
But some states have fixed this. So that there's some states that do a really good job with this.
Is Massachusetts
Just
one
You
of
got
them?
the tip jar. You got the tip jar in there. That's it. Those are at the dispensaries too. I got a little acne.
Okay, so this is how it works. A consumer walks into a dispensary and says, "Give me the stuff with the highest THC."
I've done that.
Everyone does that. And then the store owner goes to the cultivator and says, "Listen, the stuff that you're selling with lower THC, it's not selling. I can't sell it. I'm only going to buy the stuff from you that has higher THC."
This is getting into what
And
I
so
was just
the
saying.
cultivator goes to the lab and says, "Either you give me higher potency, or I'll leave you for a lab that will." And we
Do
can
people call you? Have
Sounds
you
about right.
experienced this? Like people
Of
say,
course.
"Hey,
Yes.
fucking
said that
bump me
earlier
up
in the
or
show.
I'm gone."
Yes, very directly.
No
And you said,
sugarcoating
no, no, no.
But the cool thing is, so that was an excellent cartoon by Brian Box Brown. But we can see this in the data, exactly what it looks like. So
Looks like
here's a
those
single
HR
cultivator
cartoons.
and all of their THC results for 2022. Each dot represents one test that they sent in for THC testing. On the left, they're testing with one lab in blue. On the right, they're testing with another lab in orange. The moment that they switch labs is the moment that their THC jumps up. And it goes up by a relative 28%. So
Are these the same strains?
I was just about. It's the
so
same
it's
product.
the same cultivator.
Okay, so they're
The
running
same
the
cultivator.
same cultivars probably.
Could it be true though, and they just
Absolutely.
gave them different strains?
It
Wow,
can
that
be.
must be magic strains.
So it absolutely, like, you can come up with a bunch of reasons of the moment that they switch is the moment that they change their genetics
The data changed right then.
Coincidence.
or whatever. yeah. And I can't say you're wrong, but I'm going to show what happens. We can see every single cultivator represented by each line here, and as they switch labs, their average potency that they had at their previous lab is on the left. Their average potency at this one other lab is on the right. So in every single case, every single cultivator's potency goes up when they switched to this lab, regardless of what lab they were testing with before.
Looks like broken machines.
So unless what you think is that every single one of them upgraded their genetics the day that they switched labs.
Not one out of a few.
This is
every
for the
single
same
one of them.
lab?
This
Different
is,
cultivars, same lab.
So on the right is all the same lab. All of these cultivars switched from different labs to this one lab. Regardless of what lab they went from, when they switched to this one lab, their potency jumped up.
Rob, that looks like fourth grade pictures backdrop.
Any questions?
No, so
Doesn't make sense.
No, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't. We're not surprised in any of this.
Right.
Okay. And guys, the reason why labs do this,
Cash.
money.
Of course.
So in every market, year after year, the market share of labs that offer higher potency goes up, as in they take more of the market. And this happens in every industry until one of two things happen. Either the regulators solve this problem, as some regulators have, or there are no more honest labs left. And there are some states like that also.
We have states now. Already. We have states right now that
Cra-
all
yeah,
the labs are.
but nobody's protecting the lab and all the investments that they made.
In some states there are. In some states, regulators came in and solved this problem.
But the ones that didn't, and they spent
They
all
went out
this
of business,
money,
millions of dollars.
They're still running.
and they're going out of business.
And they were
because-
like, we're not going to cheat. We're going to throw this away instead of cheating.
how much is it to set up a lab? Ballpark.
Probably a lot.
Let's say between 2 and 3 million.
No
Plus
shit.
a year or two of your time, multiple people working full time of getting it done.
Right.
So
right.
a lot.
How long does that third party vetting process take? Is that like a month-long period they come over, or is it just one day you perform some testing tasks in
You
front of them?
schedule it. They arrange to come 1 or 3 months later for 2 days or so. And then there's more communication over email.
So you got to be
It's a
paying
process.
guys to be running this lab before they even come, right?
For the 1 or 2 years before they come. Yeah, you have to get everything ready, and that's a lot of work.
Oh my god.
You have to get the whole facility ready. You have to get everyone trained. You have to get the
Yep.
SOPs, the equipment, the everything.
Now, how many people you employ?
Maybe 70 or so.
So there's a lot on the line when you come out the gate.
Absolutely.
You already got
That's
a lot
what
of
I'm
money
talking
invested.
about. That's what I'm talking
You
about.
either
Somebody's-
get with it or get the fuck out
Hey,
and
yeah,
go
but
home.
somebody, yeah, but think about it, right? It's like, can you some of these labs that need to make it because they have all these millions of dollars invested, they're going to do what they're going to do. They're going to do what they have to do to make it. But that in turn is having people smoke fucking unhealthy product.
Unhealthy product, mislabeled THC potency.
I guess I'm going to have to stick to
Corporate
drinking.
America again.
I have to stick to drinking and cigars.
So you're like exactly describing the situation. So at first, a market starts with pretty much like honest labs, and then some labs starts to manipulate results a little bit, like maybe only THC or only mold somewhat, and they start to take over the market. But then, when other labs open up, they can't be honest from the start, because if they are honest, then
They won't get the business.
exactly.
They're not going to pulse. So it's like a never-ending.
But they can't. No, but they can't even manipulate results as much as that lab that's already manipulating, because it's really hard to take someone else's client if they're satisfied. Right? The only thing you can do is do so more. So it's a race of who can provide higher potency in the 40%, what you saw, or never detect any mold.
So why can't they regulate the amount of labs opening in each state?
So in some states they do, but the big problem is lack of enforcement. Like there needs to be product recalls. If a product is found to be contaminated, it needs to be recalled.
Has there been any recalls out there?
A bunch. Maine had its first one over the last couple of days. It's a pretty new market. New York, pretty new market, has had a couple. Massachusetts has never had any. There have been tens of thousands, I might be exaggerating, maybe thousands of recalls across the country. But some states have never.
Massachusetts is perfect, as you know.
Completely. But I'm going to show why it's
Right.
not the perfectest.
Does Mass have anything set up that actually keeps you in check? Like, as a lab being open, are they spot testing your stuff sometimes?
They come in and look at whether the cameras are pointing in the right direction.
So that would be an easy way to check it. You don't even have to go to the stores. You just have to pop in on this lab and
Yes.
test the samples that they already sent out and gave stats
That's
for.
what some states do.
And now
Exactly
when somebody manipulates the number, is there like, if I audit your lab, could I see the manipulation, or is it already done? If the sample's gone, you wouldn't be able to tell. Did they just
It depends.
instead of putting a 5 in, they put an 8 in, and like you'd have to.
The
see it
first
with the
lab
camera.
ever closed for this was a Washington State lab, where there's this thing of like random numbers. A machine can create random numbers, especially through like one of the machines that we use. The last 2 digits of like 22.577. The 77 is really random. You run the same sample again, it might be 22.485, right? Those numbers are random. But people are really bad at entering numbers when trying to be random. People can't be random.
Love
So they
fat
might
fingers.
type in 4 more often than 0 or something. And so they were caught because it was so obvious that they were typing in numbers themselves that's what started the investigation into them finding out they're just manipulating results. They're typing in numbers and not actually running the tests.
Because I don't know how the machine works, but like if you're testing a sample, does it spit out the result and the result already gets loaded up to metric, or does the user take that information and then upload it like manually?
Yeah, but so I think this happens very rarely. What's more often happening is like keefing up the sample or manipulating the instrument to always give 20% higher. And a good auditor can absolutely find this. But it has to be a good auditor, an auditor that actually knows how to use the instrument, has done it before.
I just didn't know if you had to actually like catch them in the act to actually
No,
catch
the
them
results are gonna do
physically,
that.
because you can manipulate the number and then see the data will show that they're manipulating it, but to actually catch them, do you have to like catch them in the act?
So do you
almost,
see
to
the
say,
industry
by
maybe
auditing them samples?
Do you
Probably.
see the industry now, once you test it, to when it goes to market to being sold, having a timeline on it of when you have to sell it before it has to get retested again?
Not retested, but you have to sell it within a year of the original test. And I think maybe you have to retest it if you want to sell it after.
you can retest it and put it back
But
out.
it seems like but that's my point. It seems like there's such a long period of time from where that marijuana, even if it's tested good and everybody did everything correctly, by the time you smoke it could be bad.
Right.
There could be more.
So how is that preventable?
I think Jeff Rawson is the person to answer.
Jeff, somebody give Jeff a mic.
No, so off-the-shelf
I said
testing is
that.
absolutely necessary. Like someone needs to go into these stores and test these products to see are they still safe to consume. You don't have to test every product, but test some every once in a while and get results and see.
Well, at
is
least
it
the one that's
same-
being sold the most.
or just you can randomize it. You can do like all sorts of things, but you can test: is there one cultivator that's constantly selling mislabeled products? Or is there one
Yes,
lab
there
that's
are.
constantly? And I mean, you guys are finding this out, right?
Yeah.
You
Oh,
can see
yeah.
this. Like,
Everyone.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
Except
It's
a
not the
few.
hardest thing
So
to do,
I-
right?
To go back to what Rob was saying, though, that's why we did the test, because I thought I was just incompetent when we were testing this stuff.
Oh, yeah,
like,
you
this
are.
stuff's like
I
40,
thought so,
50% off, 30% off.
No,
and then
you-
that's what led us to
Yeah.
take a homogenized sample and have you test it and just like double check the machine. But my buddy's grows the same strain. He's been growing for 2-3 years, and every time we test it, it's always around like 20.8 to like 22.4. Like no matter what batch it comes from, top to bottom, whatever, just random selection. So I always go back to test that, and I'm like, man, this machine's got to be right. Because then we've also tested that in different, award, cannabis cups and stuff like that. So I'm like, but it's really that bad.
Yeah.
It's like off that bad.
Yes.
This is amazing.
This is scary.
I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah, keep on
Okay.
going.
So that's potency, and it's a consumer protection violation. There's a safety problem with potency, but we're seeing the same thing with contaminant screens. So here is a single cultivator and all of their total yeast and mold tests for 2022. On the left, they're testing with one lab. On the right, they're testing with another. On the left, they're getting what is the average failure rate across the country. 12 to 16% of flowers fail. And that's what they're getting, around 14%. But the moment that they switch labs is the moment that they never fail again.
Imagine that.
So the
Yeah.
blue is one color lab, and then when they switched to the
Yeah,
orange
imagine
lab.
that. They never fail
So
after
they sent
that.
out a few feelers, though, early on while they were still using the other lab
Yep.
and seeing it was all
Yep.
bottom, and then
And
they're
again,
like,
like-
screw it.
What you said last time of what if they just like cleaned up their act the day that they switched. And that's of course possible. But we can track every single cultivator that switched to that lab. On the left is every single cultivator's failure rate at their previous lab, whatever lab it was. On the right is their failure rate with this lab.
On the day they switched.
The day they
That's
well, no, this is their history before and
okay.
after.
Okay.
And so some of them went from 40 to 30% down to never failing again.
Probably.
But in every single case,
They had a magic
That's what I
wand
was
over there.
misunderstanding. I didn't know that was over an average.
no, this is a
accumulative
couple
with each
years
lab.
worth of data, and
Yeah.
cultivators that went to this one lab, every single one of them, regardless of what lab they came from, they decreased their failure rate. So
Over
if you
the
want to
average.
sell moldy, or if you want for mold not to be a problem, you either fix the problem or you go to a lab that won't detect it.
You sure they all didn't hire the same ringer to whip them up into shape in their cultivation
don't know.
operation?
Well, but that's the thing. I'm not saying go arrest that man. I'm saying this looks
Dig deeper.
statistically really odd. Someone should go take a look.
Well, numbers don't lie.
I would take the gloves off.
They,
No, without a doubt.
this coupled with off-the-shelf testing really shows what's happening, because you took a single sample and you showed that it is mislabeled. This shows this is systematic, but it doesn't say anything about any individual sample. But the combination is
It's a combination of the stats from all these different places, and
it's-
it's showing it.
it's the forest, and what you're doing is the trees, and them together shows the whole story.
Well, that's
how-
why when I was going to buy these brands, I just didn't buy one of their eighths. I bought 5 different strains of their eighths, like 5 different strains, and I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm asking the bud tender, give me the freshest stuff you got from this brand, and if it's not within like a month, 4 to 6, 8 weeks, I'm iffy. But if that's all they got, that's what I'll buy. Either all or nothing. They're either usually all like on point,
Or they're using a lab that is all
they're
not on
all
point.
off.
How doesn't this data allow for more investigation? Like who? Like
should.
if you like,
And so in some states they're investigating, in some states they're fixing this, and some states already fixed this.
What states have already fixed it?
Maryland, Michigan, Washington, and Nevada.
What did they do to fix it?
I'll get to Michigan and Maryland a little bit later.
Okay.
Washington, Nevada made the data available to data scientists who audited the data, reported this to journalists or to regulators.
And then put that way it went.
Yeah, because
Just like that. Imagine that.
Yeah.
You said there was class action lawsuits in California, but you just didn't mention them in states that fixed it yet.
I don't have data from California,
Okay.
so I don't know.
I would think with the state that has the class action consumer fraud lawsuits, they would.
so with this type of data, it's almost an open closed case when you're getting sued.
I don't know the.
You might want to settle that thing out of court.
Well, you probably got thousands of pages of data, right, to even make all this even possible, correct?
I think like 88 million data points.
Wow.
Like it's really it's more than any other agricultural. It's a lot of data, and it shows like systematic approaches.
Did somebody have to like create a program to take all that data and correlate it all, or did somebody have to like design something to take all that data so you could get it that quickly? Or that's a lot of fucking data.
It's a lot of work.
They got a lot of time into this.
It's a lot of work. Yeah.
It's got to be a computer person involved in this.
Yeah. I have a data scientist. I have
Jeff.
Well, it's definitely not Rick with a, over there.
Drinking.
Yeah, having a booger.
C&D student.
So that's a miracle.
Yeah. Okay. Should I keep going?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Tell me to stop if.
No, you.
No.
We're going through the whole thing.
Keep going. We're limited attention. We're
And
not that
guys,
bright.
The reason why the reason why labs do this.
Yeah, before Trevor loses attention.
The reason why labs do this. Money. In every state, labs that offer a failure rate that's 3 to 8 times lower than the national average, they increase in market share, year after year, in
So
every market.
What is that? What do those numbers mean in revenue loss to those that are doing it right? Millions?
Yeah, millions. Yeah, I mean, depending on the size of the market, you take Rhode Island, it's a small market, but in Michigan, I'll show that later, a huge market shift to labs that offer excellent results. Millions of dollars that moved from certain labs to other labs. Between $1 and $2 billion worth of flour is sold per month that's been tested by labs like this across the country.
Wow.
There's a shitload of money.
That's like 3 commas.
So just going to be the guinea pig limping.
No, and that's per month. And it's been happening for years. And that's only flour. But manipulated flour leads to
Oh,
manipulated
start with the
results for
rosin and all the other
everything.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like the gummies.
Yes.
I know. I totally believe it because we've tested a bunch of different places and it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
those
Orange Photonics has no incentive to inflate potency.
So they don't have, there's no
machine,
They have
incentive.
no incentive.
There's no incentive here to like not pass it because it's all about money.
It is until there is a disincentive to the dishonesty, until someone gets called out on it or sued or closed or products get recalled. Up until something happens, there's just take the money. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, but this type of stuff doesn't help the people that have that bias with marijuana that still think it's like a drug and so bad for you. And they can grab some of this data and be like, "See, you're smoking bad shit, right?" And you're never gonna lose that
stigma.
Yeah, that's the word.
You give them another option to trash
It's
the
like,
name
see,
of the
it's
plant.
drugs. It's not. It's bad for you,
That you guys
right?
can't even get this testing properly.
No, you're
yeah,
right.
but
right? And it should be one of the most healthiest things for you.
alcohol
Technically.
kills more people than all the drugs combined. Though.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Combined, them all, and still people are still moving out.
So those are probably some of the same labs that gain market share from the THC inflation too, right?
So out of the
Or is this different set?
So
You
this is a
already
different
showed it.
set. Yeah. So this is for specifically contaminants in Massachusetts. Mold in Massachusetts.
So, what do you think this rate is going to grow when people
Oh, wait
if
a
they don't
second.
fix it?
Who's trying to?
It gets to 100% of only those labs, and then it stops growing. As in, like once those labs have 100% of the market, as they do in some states, there's no more change. That's the point at which there's no more.
There's no more fight.
There's
no more
nobody left to fight.
Yeah, there's no more market.
It's
to
like
gain.
T-ball. Everybody wins today.
Yeah, well, everyone loses because at that point, like they have to compete with each other of who can get even higher, and you get into the 46 THC % range.
Yeah, but then eventually you're really gonna see marijuana hurting people, right? And
Yep.
how do you fix that?
That's what we're trying to do here today. Trying to get this fucking information out. You just let them finish, Ricky.
Right. You broke your camera, dude.
Sure, where's my
so
lighter?
Ugly,
You already took.
yeah, ugly ass grill cracked the.
Where's the lighter? You took already.
You got them too.
I got 2 of them there.
Yeah, that was my lighter here.
Whatever.
Oh,
Got my seal on
watch
here.
out! Talk about wasting brain cells.
That what we had a bad peg?
9 minutes left. You guys keep cutting them off. I can't just
Yeah.
Okay, so this. So this is the sales pitch.
What are you directing this thing now, Jeff?
So there's 39 states with cannabis regulations. And from the data perspective, that means we have 39 different experiments that have been done. Each state has its own market, and we can see what regulations have worked, what hasn't worked, what has led to the most successful markets for everyone involved, the safest markets, and which policies have failed. And there is a lot of data. It's continuing to increase, and it can be used to really see these things of, which policies worked. And so right now we're going to take a look at some effective policies. Do you guys want to get into this? Interesting, the policies themselves, or?
Yeah, because we want to figure out how to fix this thing. We just don't want to expose the problem. We need a solution too, right?
Okay. So this is Maryland, and each point represents the percentage of fails that happened in Maryland on that month. This is for total yeast and mold. And
Wait, it shot up like that.
Shot up, yep. And it can happen because of one of two things. Either mold was introduced to Maryland on specifically June 30th, 2021, or there was a regulatory update.
No, that's what happened.
Which one?
If the aliens with the mold, they brought that mold in.
Yep. Up
Until
until
that one day.
Rob must have got this article from the National Enquirer again.
Up until that point, the border of Maryland was
That's a
protecting
big
it.
jump.
So it went from 1.5% to 21% overnight. I'm going to show you how overnight this was. So the solution was they told the industry, the labs, what methods they're allowed to use, what methods they're not allowed to use, and how to validate. And validate, all it means is prove that this method works.
What are you talking about? The methods like PCR or
whatever it is.
plate?
Yeah. So they said only plating, and you're supposed to prove that you are able to do it correctly.
And X amount of things, species they test for?
Yeah, I don't know what the exact rules were, but
Yep.
probably something along the lines of test 3 samples once a day for 3 days and get the correct result every time. If you can do that, then you're showing that what you're doing works. Because what they were doing before that was obviously not working. That's why they weren't detecting any mold. And so this shows on the left, this is the data from before the regulatory change. On the right, it's after. And you see something really crazy right here, that this red line...
What are those pass?
So everything that's to the right of the red line is a fail. Everything to the left is a pass. And that's why we see this crazy cliff right at that action limit, where it's as though mold knows, do not procreate past this exact limit.
Good thing mold knows that.
It was able to read up until that date. Because after that date, mold forgot how to read. And if I was to remove this red line, you wouldn't know where to place it on the right graph because there's no indication of where the action limit is. And the next two graphs I'm going to show are the 30 days before and the 30 days after this change. Just to show how clearly mold learned on that day.
Mold means number
where it's a steep cliff right before June 30th. And after June 30th, it was no longer a cliff. It's as though mold forgot how to read and mold started to multiply normally. It went from a 0.3% failure rate to almost 20% overnight.
This is what I don't
1 month.
Magic mold.
This is what I can't read this graph. I don't.
So let's move on
understand
from it.
No,
Or
I'm
do you
trying
wanna
to
get into
understand it.
Okay.
What's the red line?
Okay. So each blue bin.
Yeah.
Let's say the one on the far left, this guy right here.
Yeah.
That means 14 samples had 100 colony forming units per gram.
Okay.
And this right here, 10 to the 4th is 1,000. And that means 11 of them, 11 samples, had 1,000 or 10,000.
Okay.
But almost none had 10,001. Like no samples had 10,001. None of the samples were, just over this limit, but a bunch of them were right before the limit.
So that was 30 days before, and then that's 30 days after.
And 30 days after, it is like, if I remove the red line on the left, you would see that must be the action limit.
Okay, so I'm seeing that it's normal testing, so there's a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
It's on this 30 days before, it's either
It's getting away with it, not getting away with it.
Yeah. On the left,
Basically.
it's clearly manipulated, or there's mold reading the regulations. On the right, if you remove the red line, I wouldn't know where to place it.
Yes, because it's random.
Yep. And Maryland is one of the most profitable markets for industry because it's no longer a race to who can produce the cheapest products and then just buy results. You actually have to invest in the facility and the equipment and the genetics and the people and the SOPs and the
Yes,
testing.
the people.
All of this. And that makes it so that consumers get better products, the state makes more money, everyone makes more money.
Well, it's usually about the money.
Yeah. This Michigan, over 6 months, there was a steep decrease in the amount of mold detected across the state. And that's because a few labs opened up that had a sub 2% failure rate, or 6 to 8 times lower than the national average. And they took over the market.
Wow.
And it is these labs in red, they had a sub 2% failure rate. They entered the market at that point, and they had 40% of the market by the end of those 6 months. So if you wanted to make money, that was the right thing to do. Open a lab and do not detect mold.
And you make money.
Now, were you supposed to? Obviously. But were they not testing for it?
I don't know. I wasn't there. But their data looks very different from everyone else.
Data looks a little sketchy.
A little
Here.
sketchy.
Maybe you didn't get the memo to test for mold.
Well, they had to prove that they were testing it. And then regulators came in. They did a regulatory update. They said, you are not allowed to do these tests. You have to do these tests. You have to prove that you can do these tests correctly. And after that, so now Michigan is the biggest market in the country per capita, bigger than California. So Michigan, because they fixed this problem, is now making a lot of money. And consumers are getting better products.
Did everybody's making money?
Not everyone.
Did some people dip out of the market? Like some of the...
I don't know.
Well, the people that weren't doing it correctly are dipping out of the market.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
what you want.
Well,
Usually,
they
if the
can't pass.
price
They
goes
can't
up,
pass, and they can't
usually
sell
supply and
products.
demand.
Yeah.
You know, so usually maybe the people that knew they couldn't commit the fraud
So there
anymore.
might be some licenses up
They
there for
packed
sale
up and
very
left.
cheap.
Yeah.
And then there was less product on the market. I wonder if does it show that there was less product on the market after that in their metric systems of those states?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So there was less product.
No, I'm not saying that there was, but the data's in there.
You can
I
find that.
don't know what the answer is.
That would be an interesting data
Yeah.
point to
Allegedly.
correlate.
You can't really cheat with the numbers. I mean,
Yeah. And so my spiel, make the data public, and then you can see all this stuff. And there can be lawsuits where they're necessary. Regulators can see what's happening. Journalists can see what's happening.
Now, are they marketing that? Saying, hey, guess what? We passed all our stuff. Now, obviously, you
Somewhere.
can do that with,
Yeah.
you can do that, but hey, we passed our stuff with this test facility.
So cultivators don't say that ever.
Right.
Like you had a conversation with one that they wouldn't say that they're aware that their lab is manipulating results, right? No one's going to say that because then they're admitting that they are selling mislabeled products. There were some labs that advertised this. They said something along the lines of, we have the best potency results.
So if you want to be an honest brand, you need to make the right decision as a brand to go to the right lab.
But I'm saying
so you're not
to
defrauding
fix
the
this,
consumer.
to fix this, right? You have to educate the consumers. You're not going to mess with the cultivators, right? Because they're going to do their thing, right? They're going to make their money.
Yeah,
So
the brands ain't gonna educate
and
them
you
that
know
are
what?
duping them.
How you hold them accountable is if they're not selling their shit because their shit's not healthy, right? You
Yeah.
need to you have to educate the consumers.
Well, that's what
the way to fix this.
Well, first of all, you need to uplift the brands that are testing properly, and then you got to tell the consumer to get the COA at the point of sale because they have the right to it, and start looking to see what.
Yeah, but if
what
that
lab the
COA
product
is
was
by a
tested.
lab that fucking just automatically passes everything, that COA is trash.
And every
You
every
need to
lab is gonna
educate
say
them on the
that-
consumers.
Every lab is going to claim that they're honest, obviously.
Right.
And I think if you promote the cultivators that are selling honest products,
Right.
they make more money.
Exactly.
And then other cultivators want to do the same.
Right. GIA certified diamonds.
See, that's why I didn't know that when we first started testing. Now I got to get this because a lot of the packaging when we test it, some of them have QR codes, and you can get the test for like the actual lab. But then some of them most of them lead to dead ends. They just say the site's not
Yeah,
active.
but you only test them for
Metric
potency.
tag that's on there, yeah. But you can always ask the dispensary for the COA.
at the point of sale.
Always, yeah.
Yeah, but Trevor, you only test them for potency.
Well, that's a good start. If they does it show a correlation if they're juking potency, they're juking the microbial too? Is it the
yes.
same?
No, not always.
Not always.
So usually a lab, when the first couple labs that start manipulating, they only do a little bit, only one of those things.
Yeah.
And then later on, the labs that come in that are just like, we spent $3 million to open this, we have to manipulate more than the others.
You gotta make some more money.
Little more
But if
for
anything, though, as a
Little more
consumer,
for Seymour.
you know, really consumers are just worried about the potency.
Little more
So
for Seymour.
if you're just manipulating the potency, who cares? As long as the shit's clean.
Yeah, but you're paying more. Because if
Well-
it says 40%, you're buying it for more than the
Right.
identical stuff that's labeled as
Right.
20.
You're only getting 20 Oreos. That's what you're pissing Rob off.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, well,
60.
Oh, saying they're double
Yeah.
stuff, but they're not.
What about the craft brews? Them craft brews advertised at high alcohol level, you know, like 10% beer or 12% beer. What happens if you just spend, like, some of the beers like $10? Some people buy a 4-pack, you get a nice little buzz, but what happens if they were like 4%ers and you drank 4 of them and you just spent fucking $25? You'd be kind of pissed off, no?
Yeah. Exactly the same thing.
So you stated that 4 or 5 of these states changed regulation?
Yep.
And
No. Washington and Nevada didn't change the regulations. They enforced regulations.
they enforced regulations.
Closed down labs. Yep.
And then like the word on the street was, hey, start testing or else you might
No,
start testing.
everyone was testing, but then a few labs get closed down for obvious manipulation. Obvious manipulation.
Yeah.
And then other labs are like, it's not worth it to cheat.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The ones that were doing dirt get thrown out.
Now,
and
what
now
about
the word's
Texas?
out on the street, hey, we got to start testing accurately
Yeah.
or else we're going to lose our license too.
And
So-
they were testing accurately. That's why they weren't closed. But then other labs opening there, like, it's not a market worth going to if you're going to cheat.
So what did they do? They start actually double checking the test results through the lab
They investigated labs. They walked into the labs. They
and pulled them samples? Probably, I'd assume, right?
I don't know, but everything's really well documented, especially in Nevada. And it shows like 20 findings of they multiplied incorrectly. They did this, they did that. Like a lot of things that they did always to benefit the cultivator. Always increasing potency, never decreasing.
Oh,
Like,
it
all
was
those
never-
mistakes.
It was never the other way.
No, yeah.
So that's blatant and gross.
Yeah.
So have you gotten any traction in Mass? Have you submitted any data to the CCC, these findings?
Yep.
Have you gotten meetings or
Yep. We got meetings.
receptive?
You getting traction?
Yeah, positive meetings?
No positive meetings. So originally I submitted the Freedom of Information Act request in Massachusetts and right away got denied. And the language used in the denial was misquoting the law. They added words. And so I appealed to the Secretary of State's office. And the Secretary of State said to them, no, you have to comply with this, to the CCC. And so I got the data, I analyzed it, and maybe the day that I received it, I messaged leadership at the CCC, and they said, I need to share with you what's here. I shared it with them, and then within a little bit, they told me, the staff told me they will not be sharing any more data with me.
Why wouldn't they want this data out?
And then they denied my FOIA again. So they didn't give all the data, they gave some of it. And they said they're going to keep giving more.
So what did they give you? Edibles or
And
something
then maybe
first?
2
or-
months ago, no, only flour, but only for, not the whole time range that I asked for. Only some of it.
Okay.
And so then they denied my FOIA. The original FOIA, they denied it for a second time. That was maybe 2 months ago.
So this is an ongoing
fuck?
battle.
This is an ongoing battle. And so right now we're again going through that appeals process with the Secretary of State's office. The CCC told both me and the Secretary of State's office that they don't have any more data to give. But I know that several other people
They got
also
the data.
submitted FOIA and got exactly the data that I requested. But since I've been sharing all the data, they shared the data with me. And so I wrote to the Secretary of State's office and to the CCC with screenshots of the data that they never gave me as a response to them saying they don't have any more.
But somehow you got the data from other people.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
Must
gave
have
it
been a
to you.
fire
from
to
the
get
data.
rid of all the rest
So that's
of the data.
blatant then.
Well,
If
yeah.
they gave it to others but not you? Just
Well, yeah,
because
the-
you're vocal?
Say it again?
Just because you're trying to be vocal about it?
Exactly, because
they
of that.
didn't give it to you.
Yes.
Oh my
They didn't give me more data. Well, because how awkward is it when I say very directly to them, $1.4 billion worth of product has been sold that went through those labs to consumers since June of 2021.
Fraudulent.
And I pointed out exactly how to find it in the data, exactly what it looks like, why it's happening, how it's
bad
happening.
stuff.
I showed them all of this. And imagine if you're a regulator that was supposed to oversee this for years. you either have to start doing something about it and saying like, yes, this is a problem and we did not do anything about it for years, or you shut up the messenger. Also a tactic.
How's that working out for him?
I think only one person at the CCC is allowed to speak to me, and no one else is allowed to speak to me anymore. And I am not allowed to speak, or they told me I'm not allowed to speak to anyone other than this one person.
But you have an agent card though too, right? Because
But I'm a private citizen. They can't tell me what to do. I can speak to anyone,
Yeah.
but they can tell their own staff not to speak to me. So I think they're protecting themselves to be like, we don't hear anything, we don't see anything.
Oh, definitely.
Because they have never had any product recalls, any real inspections, any investigations.
They haven't had any product recalls since it went wreck five years ago.
I think there was not a product recall, but something like someone didn't do like all the tests on Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket, one of those.
So we've got to be like
I
got to
think
be
they're closing a Martha's Vineyard anyway.
Yeah,
I think
there
we
was
met him.
there was some like documentation problem. That was the only thing that they consider like somewhat a recall, but
Documentation?
there are no actual recalls. No product recalls from all this. Zero.
we're running a flawless operation out here.
Massachusetts doing it
Completely.
right.
Yep.
I want a job doing that.
Doing what? They're not doing it.
There you go. Sounds like
That's why he wants
Rob
the
wants
job.
a free lunch.
Yeah. That's why he wants the job. You don't have to do anything.
well, once this all goes out there, maybe one of the news stations will pick it up and they put it on the news, and boom, all of a sudden it gets fixed.
2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, there was a Boston Globe article about something very similar to this.
Who wrote it?
Boston Globe, Shira Schomburg. Jeff was in there. It was on, look, there are other states that have solved this. We're asking the CCC to solve this problem. And I shared the data from Maryland, from Michigan. And it shows that there are more successful markets and they just solve these problems. It's not the most difficult thing to do.
Is it almost like a boilerplate thing each of these places did to solve the problem? Like
They're similar, yeah. I think
it's like they all took similar steps.
Nevada did something similar, plus closing down labs. Michigan did that same thing. It's language that, I found it online easily, and they can do exactly that same thing as those states did.
So it's almost just like these guys have to do their job and weed out the bad apples.
Yep.
And then, yeah, because if
if
nobody's disciplining you for getting
whole
out of line,
industry.
you can do
Yeah,
whatever
of
the
course.
fuck you want to do.
So these states that fixed it, right? What was the revenue
Criminals
difference?
would love that.
He just showed it.
in those states that fixed it versus the ones that are not fixing it. Can you show that? Because it seems like money's what fixes it.
So
Money's what drives everybody.
I do not have data on how much folks are making, but according to journalists and just what I found through reading, what I can find, Maryland is one of the more profitable markets, and Michigan is the biggest market per capita. They still have problems. They did not fix everything.
Right.
There's still manipulation, but it's much less than other states.
But what about even parts of the process where
Detroit's good because they're always manipulating it.
where the brand gets to bring the sample? Because you as the lab, you don't get to send your inspector out and pick the batch. Like
don't
my
think it's a
buddies
huge
do.
problem.
My buddies do like soil remediation.
Yeah.
Like whenever there's a town inspector there, like you don't bring like a supposed contaminated soil batch like to them.
Yep.
They send an inspector out there and they tell you, like, point to a spot and hey, fucking like dig right here, this amount deep, and I'm gonna grab that sample.
Yeah. So
And that's like a valid test. So how do you even know as the lab? You could be doing your job right too as a lab, and these guys could be doctoring the sample before it gets to you.
Yep, it could be. So off-the-shelf testing is what would solve that. It's someone going in and actually testing a sample off the shelf, and then you can determine, was it the lab? Is it always that this one lab doesn't find mold, or is it this one cultivator that sends the fake product?
Sample.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly what Jeff does. I think that's
Yeah,
perfect.
canaside.org. You gotta hire this guy. I was gonna say I'll sign up for it. With you on
It's the
Photonics.
CCC that needs to hire him. Well, nonprofits have to be transparent, and what Jeff has is exactly what the CCC needs to hire to do this kind of work, where it's fully transparent. Everyone sees, the approach, the people doing it, the results from the lab, the original results.
You're giving this. We might have to have Jeff back on another show. We'll
Right.
get the lamp right on him. We'll get him hot.
No, that's exactly what needs
We'll
to
have to
happen.
vet this guy ourselves back again.
Yeah. And as a nonprofit doesn't belong to anyone. And so nonprofit has to have a plan of how it releases its data over time, right? And so as a nonprofit, like they have to have data transparency. Like they have to show their process, they have to show all that stuff. But the state wants to make more money, obviously. And all of the elected officials, they want for the state to make more money.
Right.
And there are changes that could be made to improve these programs, this cannabis program, that has shown to make more money in other states. So they have an incentive to fix this. It's financial, but it's also public health, all that stuff. But to them, I think financial is the biggest thing. If they can bring in more tax revenue because they fix this problem, then they get their win.
So how can you get somebody, so as long as I guess I say by my standards and my testing results, it's inaccurate. You got to.
Well, I mean, if you're fully transparent, this is what the product says, this is what we got. Right?
That's
and
it.
someone could say they don't trust the orange photonics, right?
Right. And then, too, I can't blame the lab or the brand because I'm not seeing the product, the process which the product gets to the lab, too. Still, the lab could be honest, but this guy could be juking it. Or the
only people that are going to
the
trust.
cultivator could be honest, but the lab knows, he could be fucking late on his electric bill and he's like, fuck it, let's just do it. You never know when that day is, when that lab switches, but if you look to the numbers,
You know when the lab switches.
you know when he switches, is what I'm understanding from this.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you.
This is really cool.
Yeah, you had a good time?
Oh, yeah, this is wonderful.
Thank you.
you.
I really do appreciate it, man. Thank you. That's a wrap, man. Episode 15.
Oh, in the books. How
You
you
can
doing?
contact Yasha at mcrlabs.com.
That's it. Any of you cultivators want legit numbers and you don't want to get caught up in a
I think
fraud
what you're
case,
trying to do, Yasha, is level
go
the
to
playing
MCR.
field. That's what you're trying to do, huh?
Yeah? Oh, that was dope. That was wicked good. I'm glad you did all that digging and got that information.
Wake up in the morning, got a bag on my schedule. Niggas talking, bitches talking, they is not on my level. Check the time, wrist rolling, rose gold on the bezel. Grab my keys and get my cell and hit the door with a shovel. It's time to get it out the mud, 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 out the mud. It's time to get it.